I'll call this meeting to order. Representative Lunan moves the minutes from April 7th. Representative Lunan? Representative Lunan moves the minutes from April 7th.
Yes, he does. Just say yes. Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And Representative Garofalo to House File 1951. Would you like to make a motion to move your
Thank you,
bill?
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I move that House File 1951 be considered for possible inclusion in a later bill. Madam Chair and members of the committee, Dakota Electric is the only rate-regulated cooperative electric co-op in the state of Minnesota. There's a very unique interaction they have right now with regards to their property tax features, and I have two fine testifiers here from Dakota Electric who will explain the bill, and I would ask for members' support. So, please.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Doug Larson with Dakota Electric Association, and with me is Margaret Schreiner. She's on the board of directors with Dakota Electric. We appreciate the opportunity to speak this afternoon. As Representative Garofalo mentioned, Dakota Electric is a not-for-profit electric cooperative. We're member-owned. We're the only rate-regulated electric cooperative in the state, and we're the only regulated utility that has a property tax adjustment. By that I mean as our property taxes, the taxes that we pay go up or down, we pass through that increase or decrease to our members as an adjustment line item on their bills. When the PUC approved this for Dakota Electric, they recognized that we have a different organizational structure than the other regulated utilities. And in fact, the commission has not approved this type of adjustment for the investor-owned utilities. Probably obvious to state, but our property taxes are outside of our control. When the this property tax adjustment allows us to pass through those increases or decreases in property taxes to our members. And if you may be wondering, yes, we have had decreases in our property taxes. I've looked back at the adjustment mechanism that we've had in place for nearly 20 years now, and about 60% of the time, it's been a credit on our members' bills. So it hasn't always been a charge. More than half the time, it's been a credit. Right now, the property tax adjustment, or for us to qualify for this adjustment and put it on bills, we're required to meet a certain spending threshold for our conservation programs. And this was a feature that was first set up about 20 years ago now, when the focus for energy conservation programs was on spending. I'm sure you're all aware now that the new focus is on energy savings itself and not necessarily spending. So what we're looking at for this bill is it kind of removes that link between the conservation spending and qualifying for the property tax adjustment, and would simply allow us to implement this adjustment. We see this as a benefit for our members and for the cooperative. I should also point out that on the Senate side, the bill there, the chief author is Senator Carlson, and co-authors are Senator Clausen and Senator Metzen. So with this, once we get this approved, we're still committed. Conservation, if you're wondering, we have a number of conservation programs. We have met the energy conservation goal since that became the new requirement. We continue to look for new opportunities. It's part of our strategic plan as a cooperative. We're here to help our members with that. And we ask for your support on this bill. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, that that concludes the invited testifiers that we have for this bill.
Okay, members' questions. Public testimony. Do we have anyone that would like to speak for or against the bill? Seeing none, we'll move to members' questions. Seeing none, any closing comments?
That's a good bill, and I would ask for members' support as we move through the process.
Okay, would you like to renew your motion?
Madam Chair, I renew my motion to have House File 1951 laid over for possible inclusion in a later bill. Thank you.
Okay, so moved.
Thanks, guys. Marion, do you want to stay up there?
Okay, we have Representative Atkins. House Bill 1693.
Representative Lunar would join me.
Welcome, Representative Atkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Lunar, would you like to move his bill?
Our bill, Madam Chair.
Your bill.
Yep, I'd like to move this bill for inclusion in the omnibus.
Okay. Representative Atkins, to your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, $306,229 is the amount, once I got the list of folks in my district with unclaimed property being held by the state of Minnesota, I spent about 10 minutes a day for 3 weeks. And that is the amount of money that has been reunited with its actual owner, just among my constituents, which to me is a lot of money. And to the folks that were reunited with their funds is a lot of money. Right now, Minnesota, the state of Minnesota is holding over $650 million of Minnesotans' money. And in the old days, we did what this bill proposes to do, which is we ran ads in the newspaper. You may remember you'd go through and see if your name or some of your neighbors' names was on there. We don't do that anymore. In many other states, they do. And that's one of 3 things that it does. In those states that still do this, they get flooded with calls after those ads run. In South Dakota next door, they literally, for weeks on end, they continue to get calls, sometimes scores or even hundreds a day, that reunite people with their unclaimed funds. The second thing that it does is that it notifies each legislator of the people. This is public information, by the way. It gets published in the newspapers. But it literally notifies Representative Lunan or I and all of you of constituents that have unclaimed property. And you go down that list, and I guarantee you it'll be folks like, for me, it was the guy that I sit next to at high school basketball games. Our daughters play basketball together. Had $721 that his mom had passed away at the nursing home that she'd been at, failed to be able to get back to him. So you'll find that it's all kinds of folks in your own local area. And in fact, I think Representative Mariani is still has some unclaimed property. Just people that are on this list. And then finally, it does something that Commerce has been unable to do. They don't actually have legislative authority to do this, is my understanding, and that is to reach out and find these folks. In many instances, you have the name, you have the address. It's finding somebody's lost wallet even. You know who they are, you know where they live, but they don't actively reach out and seek to find these people. They don't do what I did for now a total of 3 hours and 10 minutes, and that is just write them a letter or pick up the phone and give them a call. And some of them, they had no idea that they've got money that's unclaimed. In one family's instance in my local district, it was $142,000 that had been coming from an annuity that Dad had established that he didn't let the kids know about. And for whatever reason, the numbers got transposed in the address. It was 1 digit off. And for the last 13 years, those $6,000 and $16,000 and $13,000 payments had not been arriving at their rightful owner. So it's those 3 things that the bill does. Representative Lunan has been working on this issue. In fact, we visited as recently as about an hour ago, and I'd appreciate his testimony on it as well. He's got a great awareness of this issue as well, and I appreciate the efforts that he's made to move this bill along as well.
Thank you, Representative Atkins. Representative Lunan.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. When you look at the nature of the unclaimed property, the 2 biggest entities that are holding it are financial institutions such as banks and insurance companies. And the nature of some of the unclaimed property in the insurance industry has to do with cancellation premium that was not collected. I expect there's factors that exist that's going to increase that likelihood with people buying direct without an insurance professional involved. There's any relationship, and so it just gets dropped. Insurance claim checks that aren't covered, and little ancillary life insurance policies that once there's a death, and this is the one I probably understand the most, that once there's a death, there isn't a follow-up with a family member to know to even go and get that. You open up an account in a community bank, and one of the spiffs they give you is a small life policy. Maybe it's $2,000, maybe it's $10,000, and the only person that knows it's there is now passed away, and there it sits. And the account is allowed to be held by these institutions in an interest-bearing situation, so there's a benefit to the fiscal entity to keep the money, even though they're mandated to look for the owner. And then after 90 days, there's a letter that has to be sent out. At the 180-day mark, there's another letter, and after a 2-year period, when there's no response, that's when the state comes in, the Commerce Department, and takes the money and makes an attempt to locate the people also. Eventually, a lot of this money's ending up in the general fund, and that's what we're trying to do, is add a consumer protection aspect to this. So I want to thank Representative Atkins for bringing this bill forward.
Thank you, Representative Lunan. Representative Atkins, I understand we have a DE1.
We do. If Representative Lunan would be kind enough to move the DE1, that's the one we've been working off of and working with the chair on.
Wonderful, Representative Lunan.
And I ask to move the D1 amendment.
Okay, would you like non-person staff to walk through that amendment?
No.
Or we could. I mean, frankly, Madam Chair, that's the bill that I described,
Okay,
because we kind of anticipated that was what was going to find its way, hopefully, into the omnibus bill.
okay, all those in favor of the DE1, say yes. Aye. Opposed? Amendment is adopted. Okay. Any other testifiers in the audience that like to speak for or against the bill? Seeing none, we'll move to members' questions. Seeing none. Oh, do we have a,
Chris.
is there a member question?
Okay.
Representative Studinsky.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a kind of a general question. So let's say I had a relative that passed away and it was maybe kind of an investment potential that maybe the family members didn't know about. Would that be a taxable event if so say the money came out and then a family member collected it, so I collected it. Would I have to pay taxes on that money, or would the taxes already be taken from it so that we could take it, or how does that process work as an individual that would be potentially claiming some of this process?
Well, even if Madam Chair,
Representative
even if once the state takes the money, if that's a tax-favored product and it hasn't been taxed yet, it becomes a taxable event regardless, back to the estate or whoever the owner of that account is. So yes.
All right.
Representative Studinsky.
And just I was just kind of gandering through the bill really quickly. Will they use potentially the fiscal note on this bill to buy? Will they use potentially the forfeited property to help pay for outreach? So if $1 is forfeited to the state from the general fund, is there essentially any tie to that to actually do the outreach then? So if you couldn't find someone, the money comes to the state, then we'd use that dollar to help, find other people so they wouldn't lose the money, or however that would work to the general fund.
Madam Chair, and to the representative from Lyon.
Atkins.
The short answer is no. Whatever money that you've got lost or unclaimed sitting at the state of Minnesota, you have 100% right to that. None of that will be used for anything else. And it's, that, I believe, is true in perpetuity. What this, in the fiscal note is, I pointed this out to the chair and Representative Lunan and I did earlier, on the newspaper ads is actually scalable, so it's a matter of what could be afforded out of the Commerce Department budget that you all decide is appropriate. But I did want to emphasize that none of that money that is in that unclaimed fund that belongs to Representative Lunan or somebody else, or Representative Mariani, would be used to pay for any of this.
Madam Chair?
Representative Studinsky.
Thank you. Just one final kind of follow-up. You mentioned South Dakota and kind of a lot of the things that they're doing or other states around the area that are doing for outreach. How do we kind of stand as kind of as a state when it comes to just the money piling up? I'm sure they probably have a lot less as far as that backlog. I think you talked that the $600 million of potential assets that are laying out there. How do we stack up? Do you think this would help alleviate some of that and get us more in line where other states are at, or how do you feel that would potentially work?
Madam Chair, Representative Swedzinski, I don't specifically know. I can tell you this much, and that is that it's roughly, right now, what we have in the state of Minnesota is roughly 3 times what we had just 10 years ago. It was 200 and some odd million about a decade ago. It's now over $600 million today. And the states, my understanding is that the states that actively engage in finding people are much more successful in returning those funds to the rightful owner. Now, in credit, by the way, in credit to the Department of Commerce, their numbers have actually gone up the last few years as the amount on of unclaimed funds has gone up. They've also been more successful in getting money back. It's just that they're not as successful as the amount of money coming in.
Representative Swedinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just a final comment, not a question, but I really think that this bill is important, just as we've got a lot of the aging baby boomers, the silver tsunami that's coming our way. There's going to be a lot of assets that folks maybe haven't, I don't mean anything personal either, folks, but, you know, I think we've got a lot of assets and things that the retired folks, as they pass on, will have a lot of more instances and the chance of this really ratcheting up. So I appreciate both your efforts on behalf of our relatives. And hopefully we all get a call at some point from the Commerce Department on behalf of that spill. So thank you.
Representative Lunan, did you want to comment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members. An example of how this account happens is when that storm went through North Minneapolis and you had a high incidence of absenteeism. The insurance company came out, evaluated the loss, and sent the first of 2 checks, which was for the actual cash value on the property, and that check was sent out but never cashed. That sits in an account, and eventually that's what gets turned over. When those storms hit, I contacted the carrier I represent, and the size of their unclaimed property account multiplied many times over, and is now coming through the process because we're past the 2-year period, and there it sits and gets identified. I think an important thing for the public to know is that even after the state has gone through and culled or cut money out of that account and put it into the general fund, if later on you find out that in fact a family member or something has unclaimed property, it literally is never too late. You can go in and claim those funds, and they'll be distributed.
Okay. Representative Mahoney?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just as a note of caution, make sure you keep all your records, because you have to have the death certificate, the insurance certificates, you have to have all those records, and you have to have it notarized when you sign all this stuff, and you have to have the executor and the power of attorney paper. I know someone,
Sound like you speak from experience, Representative.
and I had to listen to the half-hour complaining about all the paperwork they had to go get. So just keep it in a place where you can find it.
Representative Lunan?
And to Representative Mahoney's point, that is exactly right. There's a lot of safeguards in there simply because this would be fertile dirt for fraud. And in fact, there's companies out there now, this is at this point is not illegal, that are basically hunting for the money for people and will take a commission on your money to go and simply do the legwork that anyone can do. And Representative Atkins' bill makes it a lot easier for people or people around someone who's got unclaimed property to go and get their money back.
Representative Garofalo, did you want to have a?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. And to Representative Lunan and Representative Atkins, can you just cover Section 5 of the bill, of the delete all amendment? Or if you guys want to go to nonpartisan staff, just kind of cover what that portion of the bill is.
Representative Atkins, would you like to cover it, or would you like nonpartisan staff?
I can take a whack at it, and then if I get it wrong. Section 5 is the appropriation. It starts on line 3.5. It's $500,000 in fiscal year 2016 from the general fund for a grant for pay-for-performance contract for a vendor who will facilitate the return of abandoned property owners. What we're talking about is seeking RFPs that would, or doing an RFP, having vendors make proposals. We talked about various commission rates, but hopefully that would be part of the proposal that they would make, is a competitive amount in terms of what they would be seeking to be, what sort of commission they'd be seeking with respect to it. And in other states where they've engaged in this, it's been highly successful. I think internal finders have also been successful. I think the department would prefer an internal approach, but the vendors have also been successful. And if I can do it, then I suspect that folks that are actually professionals at it can probably do it even better than I can.
Representative Garofalo.
And thank you. And Representative Atkins and Representative Lunan, for those who may be watching on TV today, is there a website that people can check right now to see if their name is on this unclaimed property list and they have access to this hundreds of millions of dollars?
Madam Chair, Chairman Garofalo, for the millions at home watching this on TV right now, and I appreciate actually you mentioning that. Minnesota has a vendor called www.missingmoney.com, and you go there, you plug in your name first and last name, and it will tell you if you have any unclaimed or lost property being held by the state of Minnesota.
Representative Garofalo.
And I can see in the audience, the room, a frantic group of people going to their phones, entering the web URL. But just again, from a public education standpoint, is it correct in saying that no one ever has to pay to get their money back? There might be some hucksters or scam artists out there that say, well, you know, give us $20, then you get your money back. Am I correct in saying that this unclaimed property, never, ever do you have to pay to get it back? Is that a correct statement?
Madam Chair, Chairman Garofalo, you are absolutely 100% correct.
Representative Lunan.
Another area, just to finish up with Representative Atkins said about where you can look for property. Actually, on the Minnesota Department of Commerce website, up on the blue bar, there is an unclaimed property tab, and you can do a search by name there. You have to do it one name at a time, so it is kind of redundant. And that's one of the things this bill's trying to remedy, is to make it easier to look, but the capability is there. If you're just sitting there and you want to find out if your in-laws have money or anybody has money, you can go through. They're all on there, and it goes by name and then city.
Representative Garofalo. Good. Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Representative Atkins, I noticed on page, excuse me, page 2 of the bill, it says that they're going to be using newspapers and so forth. Maybe in order to save money, we could just have them print your op-ed that you published and put that in all the newspapers. That would probably do just as well. But I do have a couple
We're
of
working on that.
Okay. I do have a couple of questions. How to Chair Garofalo's comments on line 3.10. How did you arrive at the 7%? And if I missed that, I apologize.
Representative Atkins.
Madam Chair, Representative Fabian, that was literally just in a discussion among the interested parties. We put in up to 7% because my hope, and I visited with Chairman Garofalo about this, and I think Representative Lunan would agree, is if they're willing to do it for 1% or 3%. But any more than 7 just seemed like too much to me.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then a follow-up. You talked about the vendors in the RFP. Give me an example. I mean, who do they have for vendors in other states where they're doing this? What type of business or individuals or whatever would take on this project?
I think Representative Lunan has a better answer to that.
Representative Lunan.
Okay, Madam Chair, Representative, right now, the entities that are holding the property, the banks, the insurance companies, they are already working with companies that specialize in this. It's almost like the antithesis of a bill collector, because rather than coming after you for money you owe us, we're coming after you for money we owe you. And there's a whole cottage industry of this out there that are different states are using, but also the banks, simply because they're required to, from a statutory basis, in Minnesota anyway, I don't know about other states, but they're already utilizing those type of companies.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to that point, then, are there Minnesota-based companies that do this type of work?
Representative Lunan.
Yes, there are. There's several of them, which gives me an opportunity to bring up an important point. A remind point that Representative Atkins brought up is that you can go out and pay someone to go get your money. That is never necessary. You can go do it yourself for nothing. But those entities are out there, and you see them advertised on television where you've got money out there that you can get, and they'll go do the searching, but they're going to take a percentage of that. That's not necessary.
Thank you, Madam.
Any other questions from members? Seeing none, any final comments? Representative Atkins, Lunan?
Madam Chair, I'm going to follow the chairman's lead. It's a good bill. We appreciate your support, and I appreciate Representative Lunan and Representative Garofalo's help with it.
And we hope legislators take advantage of the aspect where you'll be getting lists within your district, and you will be doing a definite public service.
Very well. Representative Lunan, would you like to renew your motion?
Yes, I would, to put it on the potential omnibus bill.
House Bill 1693 will be included, possible inclusion in the omnibus bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Representative Vogel.
All right. Representative Vogel, do you have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move House File 1969 for possible inclusion.
Representative Vogel moves House File 1969 for possible inclusion in a later bill. Representative Vogel, to your bill.
Thank you. House File 1969 provides for legislative approval of any proposed housing plan developed by the Metropolitan Council before it would take effect. It further provides the council must submit the negotiated affordable and life cycle housing goals for legislative action before they can be adopted. And finally, in determining the affordable and life cycle housing opportunities amount, the council would need to report by March 15th the estimated amounts for each municipality. The reasoning behind the bill is to have elected official oversight for any housing policy plans which the municipalities in the 7-county area would be expected to follow. This bill is not about the contents of any housing plan. It creates an opportunity for state legislators to meet and confer with locally elected officials about any housing plan that may be drafted before it could be implemented. It is intended to give an elected body, the legislature, an opportunity to intervene if necessary. It would help to ensure that locally elected officials have sufficient input into any plans which could interfere with their ability to serve their local community while still staying consistent with a wider metropolitan area. And I have today with me Kim Crockett, who would like to chat a little bit about the procedure itself.
Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Kim Crockett with Center of the American Experiment. We are a nonprofit policy organization here in the state of Minnesota. I'm here in that capacity today, but also wanted to let you know that I'm a former city councilwoman where I worked on my comprehensive plan, including some housing issues. The Center of the American Experiment has studied the Met Council off and on for many years, and we recently took a careful look at Thrive 2040. It's a long-term plan for the metro region in some detail, including the draft housing plan. My main point for you today is that housing is not a system like wastewater treatment or metro transit that the legislature has authorized the Met Council to manage or plan for in the metro area. Nonetheless, the council came up with a very detailed, rather large housing plan for the metro area. The council, the Met Council itself, discussed that problem while drafting the housing plan and even asked for clarification from its legal counsel about its authority to expand its reach into housing at the local level. It was told by its legal counsel that the legislature had not authorized the council to treat housing as a system. It does have duties under the Livable Communities Act of 1995, but participation in that program is voluntary on the part of cities. Nonetheless, the council proceeded to draft that detailed housing plan for Thrive 2040, and it relied on weaving together its authority for transit and wastewater systems to advance a vision of what's called transit-oriented development for the metro area. In doing so, it is the center's position that local elected officials with boots on the ground knowledge of their communities and development needs have been disenfranchised. What House File 1969 helps to accomplish is reasserting the prerogative of the legislature in the area of housing. It essentially throws a lifeline to local elected officials and cities and counties who are left without meaningful authority over their communities that they were elected to represent in vital development and long-term planning matters. I'll conclude by saying that the Met Council is a formidable agency that is in the position to impose its vision for metro area cities and counties on our citizens without their buy-in or representation from their elected officials. And that is why the center is supporting House File 1969. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Crockett. And usually what we do is we make sure we get all public testimony, and then you'll be available for questions afterwards.
Sure.
Representative Vogel, do you have any other invited testifiers?
I did, but I'm thinking that because we moved a little quicker, she is not here yet, so.
Okay, well then, do you have any other invited testifiers before I go to public comment?
No.
Okay. If your testifier shows up, we'll just have them testify
Thank
at that point. This is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public who wish to testify in favor or voice concerns with the bill? Come on down. Hi, welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and members, my name is Patricia Nauman. I'm the Executive Director of Metro Cities. We are a member-based organization that represents cities across the 7-county metropolitan area before both the legislature and the Metropolitan Council. I wanted to express some concerns that we have with House File 1969. While Metro Cities does support broad legislative oversight of the Metropolitan Council, and we also have several policies that relate specifically to the work of the council, our concerns are that this bill would in effect add yet another layer of statutory requirement and authority over an issue right now, housing, that is not a regional system in statute. By adding legislative approval, we believe actually gives more weight to something that is now both, is something that is really local and regional. The housing goals that are referenced in this bill as well are goals that cities do voluntarily work on with the Metropolitan Council in order to be eligible for grant programs. These programs are funded with local property tax dollars. They are not state dollars. And we do believe that these are, again, primarily issues that should be decided at the local level and not have additional legislative oversight or authority. So with that, I would conclude my comments and would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing. Are there other members of the public who wish to testify in favor or voice concerns with the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Judd Shetton. I'm the Government Affairs Director for the Metropolitan Council, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak on House File 1969. And the council...
Mr. Shetton, I just want to be clear. Are you still one of the 10 hottest people at the Capitol, according to City Pages magazine?
Mr. Chair, I think that there was a misprint, and I'm sure that that is not the case.
I agree. I think it was a
Okay,
misprint.
good.
Absolutely. Mr. Shetton, please continue with your testimony.
Well, that's great, because now I got to...
Now that he's knocked you down.
Yeah, I guess. Well, Mr. Chair and members, the council does have some concern about the bill, and we come at it from a couple angles. We are first a little bit concerned about where this legislation is coming from. We have not heard from cities. We have not heard from folks that have asked for these changes to be made. In Section 1 of the bill, it says that the legislature has to pass something to plan or plan element related to housing, regardless of the council's action to adopt it. And what this really does, it severely limits the council's ability to follow through on other statutory responsibilities we have in Chapter 473. We have responsibilities regarding the Land Planning Act, where we work with cities to prepare comprehensive plans, system statements. I think Ms. Nauman from Metro Cities pointed that out pretty well. I also think that with Ms. Crockett's comments related to housing is not a system, and we agree with that. And I also agree with what Ms. Nauman said, is that if you were to pass this, you make housing more of a system than what it is today. And so I think that you may be having the opposite effect of what you're trying to do here. Relating to Section 2 of the bill, it says that a law needs to be enacted annually to approve negotiated affordable and life cycle housing goals. Well, currently the council negotiates these goals with communities when they want to participate in the Livable Communities program. And we do this every 10 years. We did the last ones in 2010, between 2011 and 2020, and it'll again happen in 2020 for the following decade. And the council negotiates this with cities. And in the last cycle, we included cities and housing advocates as we went ahead and prepared these goals. And we had many of the cities who we don't see here testifying in favor of this bill participating in that. So that is just a little bit concerning on our end as well. And since these goals are already legislatively laid out, why is this new legislative approval necessary? I think that's a question that the committee should ask itself. And the formula for determining the affordable life cycle housing opportunity amount, which is obviously a lot to say here, is already defined in statute again. So we are unclear what Section 3 of the bill really is intending to do. Just to wrap it up here, this bill, if it passed, number one, it does create more of housing as a system than what we have today. These approvals or potential delays have the ability to significantly delay other work that the council has to perform. And again, we are not sure what Section 3 of the bill does. But my other question, and Mr. Chair and members, is that we've had significant conversation related to the Met Council, the Thrive Plan, housing goals, other things in the Government Operations Committee, and also in Representative Runbeck's subcommittee. And this bill does not have a Senate companion. It is way beyond the deadlines, and so we are just interested in trying to figure out, what the next step is for this bill, and if it would be more appropriate to send it back to those committees so we have a chance to have that conversation in those committees that clearly have jurisdiction over a broader Met Council activity. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, but we're also happy to talk to any cities that are bringing this forward, but we haven't been had any conversation with anyone at this point because they haven't brought anything forward. So no offense to Representative Vogel, but we can't support this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Shetland. And just from a process standpoint, clearly if this bill were to move forward, it would need to be, action would need to be taken by the Government Operations Committee. So how that could take place, there's various ways that could take place, but it would need to go through Government Operations. Questions, and thank you, Mr. Shetland. You'll be around for questions from members? Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to testify in favor or voice concerns with the bill? Mr. Vogel, is your testifier here yet or not?
Doesn't appear to be.
Okay, so what we'll do is, if and when your testifier shows up, we'll have them come down and testify, but with the exception of that, we'll close public testimony now and move to member questions and comments. Representative Mahoney.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Your answer to Mr. Shetland was actually my question, and this seemed to be a little out of sync in how the process should be working with the Committee on Metropolitan Council and the Government Operations and everything else, and just wondering where this bill was going from here and how it would resurrect itself after deadlines like this. But I think you've answered that. So,
Well, I thought you were going to bring up my point about him being one of the top 10 best-looking people according to City Pages. I thought you were talking about that question. Okay, now I understand. But yes,
well, I thought your CA was kind of in wasn't he listed in? No, never mind.
So Representative Mahoney, just to be clear, the Representative Sanders Committee would need to take positive action on this language before it could be on the floor. So questions or comments from members of the committee? Representative Hortman?
Representative Scott and I probably have the same question. We were wondering where we could get the list.
Normally, Mr. Chair.
Representative Scott.
Normally, Mr. Chair, when a document is spoken of in committee, we have a copy of it before the committee members.
Okay. Well, we will. We'll get that available for members of the committee for the evening session. Then. Representative Mahoney. Oh, I'm so glad we're on TV today. This is great. Okay. So, questions or comments from members of the committee? Okay. Representative Vogel, any closing comments?
No, other than I believe it's a good bill that will allow local influence on the comp plan process to be done in a more efficient, effective way, and would appreciate the moving the bill on to the next step.
With that, Representative Vogel renews his motion to have House File 1969 laid over for possible inclusion in a later bill. Thank you. And just to be clear, members, I wasn't sure how I heard the motion before, but the Atkins bill was laid over as amended when that was taking place. Representative Isaacson moves approval of the minutes dated Tuesday.
We already did that.
You did? I knew that. Is Representative Keel here? All right, well, members, we are going to recess to the call of the chair until Representative Keel is here, and that'll be the final bill on the agenda for today. So we will we'll go in search of, and we'll be recessed to the call of the chair. Stick around. We'll try to send out a 2-minute warning. Thanks.